Today's guest conversation is with the founder and owner of Jaeger Sports, Mr. Allan Jaeger. Here's episode 65 of the Baseball Forward podcast. Mr. Allan Jaeger, wow. You know what? I just want to say welcome to the Baseball Forward podcast, my friend. How are you tonight?
Hey, look, first of all, thank you for having me on, and everything's great, man. I feel I'm living in a lot of gratitude these days, but thank you for asking. Let me ask you, how are you doing tonight?
Man, I'm superb. And you know why I'm superb? Here's why I'm superb. So I'm a baseball player. Well, I was. I'm old now. But guys, our guest on the Baseball Forward podcast, to me, is synonymous with J bands. So I know every team in America has got J bands hanging around the baseball fields. Well, this is Mr. J Band himself, Mr. Allan Jaeger. So I'm superb. I get to talk to you. I get to pick your brain for the next 45 minutes and call it a weekend. How about that?
Hey, sounds wonderful. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. Hey, so I want to start this off. Because I always you said a word to me before we, the word gratitude, and I'm like, the older I get, the more mature I get, right? The wiser. I really like to understand if people in their positions understand what their impact has been. And I want to ask you specifically because, man, you've been in this game since the early 90s. Jaeger Sports, the early 90s, at the forefront of so many important things. Do you realize the impact you've had on the game of baseball? Let me just ask you that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that you're coming out not pulling any punches.
No.
You know what's funny is I do a lot of meditating and I work, a lot on the mental part of game and life and health. And and also my background is really more in Zen, which is really more about going with the flow and being present. And so in a way, I think I stay pretty immersed in what's happening. But, if I stop and look back, I mean, I think about how long I've been doing this, pre-internet. I mean, it's
Wow.
unbelievable. I wrote my first book on the mental part of sports and life came out in 1994, which is amazing because I'm only 29.
Yeah.
But I think that what happens invariably because I've been around the game so long, I've had conversations with people that whether it's a podcast or something where they'll reference something from. I mean, I spoke at the ABCA convention as one example in like 2002. That's already 23 years ago.
Wow. I was playing back then.
Yeah. And so I guess you just start thinking about, I mean, I've had players have unbelievable careers and retire. Mike Lieberthal, one of my first clients.
Wow.
I really should start with Jim Vatcher, my business partner, who was a teammate of mine at Cal State Northridge, who we were drawn toward each other because of long toss. He and I both loved the long toss, even though I was a pitcher and he was a position player. So I think back to your question is that I guess it's when it's more reminded, when people bring up, I think about, I used to have a list of all the organizations, whether they were fully into long toss and individuality, or they were fully into imposing kind of their own approach, which fortunately has pretty much gone away. But there was years, probably a 10-year span, where I had a list, up until about 5 years ago for pitchers going into the draft, agents, parents, coaches, so that they're aware of a team drafting them, like what kind of, situation they're going to be in case they need to really, advocate, speak up. So
Sure.
I guess it's a long way to answer your question. I'll be quiet now so we can get to some other stuff. But no, I guess the thing is back to the word gratitude. I think I feel very grateful that I've been in a position where things that I've believed in have gained traction out there in the world, whether it's the mental game, whether it's long toss and throwing, whether it's arm care and J bands, yoga. I was heavy proponent of yoga in the mid 90s for 15 years. Our players that went through our program got a lot of yoga too, a lot of them. So yeah, it just I don't know. Well, it's funny. I just haven't really like. That's a cool question in a way because it helps me reflect on like you know 35 years is a long time to
Yeah,
be
it is.
invested into something, and
Yeah.
it feels good, man. Thanks for asking. It just feels at the end of the day, look, it's what we all do. It's why you're doing a podcast.
Right.
The ultimate payoff is, are we helping the community? Are we helping kids be in a position to optimize, whether it's high school or professional baseball? Are they in a position to optimize their ability and stay healthy? And I think that's the ultimate payoff, as you know.
I think it's inspiring to me. Okay, because I'll say it straight up. The goal with Baseball Forward, more than a podcast, is elevating the next generation. Kind of our mantra, and it's so important to me to put people like you in front of, like, to me it's the right message. What you're saying and what you're preaching and teaching is the right message, and that's what the goal is. And I often I often reflect and say, wow, I hope that, I think everybody goes into whatever they're doing, they want to make a positive impact, but I don't think that they ever slow down. So I'll wrap that topic up and say, well done, sir. Like, well done in impacting the game. And I love the Zen attitude. I've watched plenty of your videos, so I know, man, you're a relaxed guy, and I think we should all strive to get to that point. I want to transition to this, which will be a little bit different. But you said long toss. Man, I grew up and I had a twin brother, and we played long toss all the time. Hey, when I graduated high school, I was 5'11", maybe 150, 155, but I was 90. And everybody always, "Why, hey," and I was like, long toss. I that's what I believe, long toss and doing the band work. So I want to ask you specifically, we're in 2025 right now, and you hear a lot of different things going on, you know, uh, not one size fits all type training. I'm curious what Allan Jaeger's opinion on long toss is at this point.
Well, that's a layup, and thank you for asking because you know we've been promoting long toss since 1990. I did it like you. I think once you do it and live it, it's
Mm,
like a lot of things in life. I use this analogy a lot. It's kind of a funny analogy, but until you go to Europe and see like a 500-year-old castle, it's hard to explain to somebody what it feels like to experience that. You can tell them all day long, and that's how I feel about things like long toss. When you are so intimate with a form of training where it is so mind blowing the effect it has on
yeah.
your body, your arm, your health, your endurance, your strength, your recovery, your feel, your proprioception, your variability, which is more having to do with feel and accuracy. Um, Also, it's almost spiritual. I'd say it is spiritual. There's something about throwing the ball high and far and then bringing it down. It's a meditation. It's
Mm,
very
wow.
deep. So I just feel like, look, are there, Eric Cressy a long time ago taught me a word, hypermobility. So, maybe there's a half of a percent or less of the population that, you know, you don't need more range of motion or you don't need the long toss because they're already hypermobile. But I've lived this for 35 years as a player. I've lived it for 35 years of observing the feedback, watching the feedback, and observing the players and getting the feedback from not only countless players, but coaches we've implemented this with, major league organizations that have implemented it. it the feedback, it's almost sounds like an infomercial, but
Mm,
it's like 100%. Like
yep.
people, like the story you're telling me, it's just so common. But the
Yeah.
problem is this: if you don't live it and do it, or aren't guided maybe the right way, it could be one of those things like, yeah, it sounds good in theory, but I have my own routine. And it's sad because it's like, I always use the analogy of a treasure chest. Your arm is a treasure
That's
chest.
fact.
Right. Let's find out what's in the treasure chest. Like if there's
Mm,
gold in there, a lot of
oh,
it, I want to find it out. And to me, long toss, I'm going to say this very clearly. There is not a close second modality. I'm going to repeat that. There is not a close second modality than long toss to finding out what's in that treasure chest from a health, strength, endurance, recovery, feel, vertical break. We can go all day on the benefits of long toss and athleticism. So, yes, for the people that aren't doing it, it saddens me. And here's another irony. I don't know if things have maybe changed now, but if you go to the Dominican, which is like, it used to be like 15% of, major league players, or 7.5% of minor league players. I mean, an incredible amount for a country of 15 million people.
Yeah.
They don't know anything different from everything I've understood and heard from about long toss. Japan, they just throw a lot, which is in the same world of long toss.
Sure.
And so I just feel like there's a lot of people in the world that have figured it out and understand it. And there's a lot of people in the States here, of course, that live on it and get it. I just kind of feel like it still could probably be more prevalent out there across the board. But look, I'm also an individuality. So if a player has something that works for them that doesn't involve long toss, I'm still going to probably make sure I give them my best bolt on what they may be missing, but I'm going to respect their needs. But I would just say this, and then we can move on. If someone said to me, what is by far the single most important thing to do for your arm, whether you're a 6-year-old or a 60-year-old, what is the most important thing to do for your arm? There is not a close second.
Wow.
There's not a close second than throwing, and throwing specifically long toss.
I love that. Allan Jaeger on episode 65 of the Baseball Forward podcast, preaching the gospel. And I want to just add this to it. The weighted balls, again, do whatever you got to do. But for me, like, I have 2 sons, and there are certain days where, like, we're out playing with all different kinds of balls that you're throwing, different balls and everything. And if it gets a little bit heavier, I start thinking, I don't know, my elbow, it just doesn't feel right. And that the way the long toss made me feel, the way, I didn't even think about that recovery, but it just felt like it did everything it needed to do for my arm. And you know what? I never got cut on. And I had a brief professional career. So I'm hoping that anybody that listens to this that hasn't heard of Allan Jaeger, well, you're crazy, but I hope that they listen to what you say and they apply it, because it's a lifestyle, but boy, it's rewarding when you're committed to it. I want to go into kind of piggyback on the long toss thing. And you see, I just get your take. The injuries, they're so prevalent. They're so prevalent right now. And if you were raising up a son, 2 sons, whatever, and you wanted to keep them healthy, what specifically would you do to keep them as throwers, to keep them healthy?
God, what a great question. Number one is, which I'll plug, we have a year-round throwing manual. I would break the year down into, I grew up on the beach, basically. Grew up going to the beach a lot. So I identify with waves. I did a lot of body surfing. Wow. So to me, I identify with the wave. And to me, I would look at the year as sort of like 2 or 3 waves. And what I mean by, and the reason this is important to put it in this context, is because when you look at the wave, what the wave is designed to do is slowly build and build its core and broaden its core and broaden its core and get bigger, but gradually, right? It gradually is building. And then there's a lot of energy and power behind it. And so to me, you're basically training your arm that way year round. You want your arm to just have this slow, our program is basically 4 to 6 weeks of build up. And you build it up, you build this wave slowly, and you get this thing so strong, and then you go into maintenance mode. And then during maintenance mode, it's more like in season. That's when you can pitch and do innings and, whatever you need to do as, as a pitcher at that point. But here's the difference. And obviously, once you get into travel ball in high school and college, there's seasons. The pro is the easiest season because they have two main waves, right? They have the season from, well, let me start with the off season. They basically have October to mid-February, early March as one big wave to just set the wave up for the next 5 or 6 months. And then they deload, and then they just go back into this slow build up again in the off season, setting themselves up for February and March. So they're the easiest. But essentially, back to your question, is for my son, what he would do is he'd be on a program where we control the wave, control the buildup, maintenance the way we want, and then deload, and then repeat that cycle. Now, based on when the high school season is, and based on what goes on in the summer, and based on what goes on in the fall, we pick our spots of like, okay, we can do this, but not that. We can do two of those, but not the third one. But the bottom line is this, to really get to the essence of your question, because it's a really important question, of course. The main thing is this: you have to understand it's training 101. There is just a way to build up the arm properly, to then maintenance the arm properly, then to deload the arm properly, and then that maybe go into a rest mode, and then you build the wave again. And you have to stay in that world. And the problem is that, well, the easy part is this: it's math. Once you understand that world, then you realize you can't mess with that world, because that's when you're asking to shock the arm, and that's when you're asking for problems. And so it's really, in a way, I love math, I love numbers. It's really math. And yes, it gets tricky, as I said earlier, based on if you're in a high school season, but then there's summer ball stuff going on, and then there's fall tournaments possibly going on. And that to me is a whole different topic of like how much should we really be doing throughout the year. But I guess maybe I'll just put a bow tie on this and say, if it's my kid, I don't know what the exact percentage is, but it's like 75%, might be a little bit overshoot, but I want to make this point clear. It's 75% training and 25% playing.
Wow.
That's just, even though obviously if you're playing a 5-month high school season and you're playing some summer ball, it's not going to really, those aren't the real numbers. But I'm trying to make a point of, think in terms of conditioning and training, and then your icing on the cake is you're playing, and you just have to make sure that you're playing at the right time. And you always, let's use this point. Let me take that 75% away, because I think that's confusing. The easier way to say it is this: you should always be pitching based off this unbelievable wave that you've built, whether it takes 4 weeks or 8 weeks or 12 weeks to get right. And then you ride that wave because you're built to ride it, and you can maintenance well because you built it right. And then at some point you're going to deload, and then you're going to start the cycle again. But the point is this: you're always pitching from strength and great recovery because of it. And you're not shocking your arm, which is one of the key reasons why arms break down.
Boy, that's good. Boy, that's good. And you know what? I'm thankful that I was around kind of smartish people. And maybe they weren't smart. Maybe we were just all dumb and we just didn't know any better. But I felt like today the youth baseball movement is madness. And I'm not pointing fingers. I just want to speak truth on what the experts know. And Allan, there are teams that are playing 55, 60 games a spring season. And then I hear we got a 30, 35 game fall schedule, and we've got a 12 kid roster. And in my head, you said math. In my head, I'm like, no, that doesn't add up. And I'll say, I've made the stance with my boys. You know what? We'll do some, if they want to do some developmental stuff in the fall on Sundays, just work out a little bit, we will. But we're not pitching. We're not doing all this throwing crazy stuff. And I want to say, I believe that will help them in the long run, at least if they want baseball to work out for themselves, and they want a career in it, and they're healthy. So specifically for you, man, I just said that the youth baseball movement is crazy right now, and it's all about tournaments. It's all about fall, showcase. And you said a word shock, and I'm like, that's what it is. It's just shocking everything. Wait. I'm throwing on Sunday in October and I haven't played catch. And it doesn't make sense to me. So I would like kind of your assessment of the landscape of that youth baseball market right now.
Well, I don't know it nearly as well as you do, but based on what I do know or have heard over the years, I would just say that, or how it's evolved, it goes back to my previous answer. You focus on, that's where that 75-25, even though
Sure.
that numbers didn't work so well, but the symbolism of why I came up with those numbers is what I'm trying to say is that you put your time and energy into training and development, of course, and the playing is still obviously really important. But I was thinking of a name when you were talking to drive this point home. Michael Phelps. If we followed Michael Phelps around for 4 years during his peak career,
Wow.
how many hours do you think he was in the pool? I mean, he had like 8 disciplines, but how many hours do you think he was in the pool training, which would include outside of the pool training in the gym or whatever, versus how many times do you think he was at the Olympics or at a world championship?
Wow.
I'm not saying he didn't do his share of performing, in those game-like situations or swim meet situations, but what do you think the percentages would be of training?
Yeah.
And I'll give you one other one. I use this one a lot too. If you study the greatest violinists in the world, the greatest guitar player, the greatest dancers in the world, how many hours do you think they spend playing, to use the metaphor, dancing, versus how many hours do you think they use to train and practice? It's obvious. So
Wow.
why would we treat the kids any differently because it's baseball? I mean, yes, we all want to play. It's fun. We want to play in these games. We want to get better in game competition. That's part of it, of course. But when you look at the rest of life, it's pretty straightforward. It's like, I'll say one last thing and then we can get on again. We used to do a summer camp for like 8 weeks. And this is before, again, the internet. We had these trifold brochures, 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and they trifolded, and we had, bios and schedule the camps and all this. And in the opening mission statement, it basically said something like this. This is 30 years ago, give or take. Maybe not, maybe 30 years ago. Wow, that's scary. We'll go with 27. It said something like, the summer is to train, not play. I mean, that was the essence of part of the mission statement, basically saying to the parents, to the kids, for their kids, like, hey, use the summer to train and develop and get better. This doesn't mean you can't still play some summer ball but at the end of the day, I'm going to use the point you made earlier about if it's my kid. If it's my kid with what I know, and I want to find out how great can he be at 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, hopefully 30, 40, well, it's a no-brainer. Yeah. If I want to find out how good he's going to be there, well, starting when he's 8 or 7 or 9 or 10, we're going Michael Phelps route. Like we're going into training, conditioning, development, whatever. Like that is, and by the way, that could also mean diversifying sports, right? It could also mean playing other sports. I'm just saying, we're not doing tons and tons of games. We can do some. It's math. But again, what is Michael Phelps doing? What's the best violinist in the world doing? How many swings do hitters take in a game versus BP versus T? Yep. T work, soft toss. I mean, cages. Like, how many swings does a hitter take before they get in a game?
And then they don't even swing when they get in the game. They take strike 3 and they don't swing that $500 bat that you bought them.
Hopefully not.
Talking with Allan Jaeger of Jaeger Sports on episode 65 of the Baseball Forward podcast. Allan, you talk, a lot. You talk a lot about arm care, arm conditioning. The thing that I'm really interested in, just based on what I know of you, boy, the impact you've had on mental training and mental preparation. And I'm really speaking, I'm not even going to get into it, but speaking from my personal experience with the game, boy, I wish I would have known that what is known now back then. So I'm curious, in 2025 again, like, are you satisfied seeing that mental training is kind of settled into the game and it's been normalized, that it's something that you have to? People ask me all the time, if you could do one thing differently as a baseball player, what would you have done? I said, mental, train my brain 100%. I wish I would have been more focused on process versus results. And I wish I would have known how to be present. And that's a lot of what you talk about. So where you sit from today, are you satisfied with where the state of the game is mentally? Is it good? Can it be better? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thanks, man. It's a great question. The first word I'm going to say is encouraged. I'm very, very encouraged. When you start something in 1990 and you see what the landscape is like then, um, which I'm not going to go into, but let's just say that talking about this topic, it's like you have seven eyes or something. It was a tough sell 35 years ago. So considering like there's apps, like considering how much progress we've made, very, very encouraged. But it's sort of like anything else in life. When you come from the part where the side that I've been on teaching and trying to spread the word and get it out there, you realize there still is a long way to go. And it's not a knock on anybody, because I think everybody's doing a great job of progressing the best they can. When I say it, let me rephrase that. When I say we have a long way to go, I think more on the strategic, process oriented, that approach. I think we've really done tremendous work. There's so many great sports psychologists and mental skills people out there that I feel like it's common on social media now. I feel like it's out there.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe what I really meant is we have a long way to go. I'm going to rephrase that now. Is more the mental practice.
Yes.
The meditation, visualization, imagery, mantras, of course, breathing exercises, which is part of meditation. I feel like that's actually where the rubber hits the road. And I feel like it takes sort of a back seat. It's secondary to when people think of the mental game, and it's getting better. I'm encouraged. But when people talk about the mental game, a lot of times they right away want to talk about the process and strategies and all that, which is really essential too. But my theory is this: I could have a great strategy to be very process oriented, and that could do the job. But if I have a mind that's still used to thinking about the last pitch, or worrying who's in the stands, or worrying about if I strike out, am I going to get pulled? That could be a pretty strong default, no matter how good the strategy is. And so what mental practice does, as much as anything, is it helps you to change your default. It helps you to start becoming aware, which is a word I use all the time. You start becoming more aware of, is your brain going into some old pattern and some negative programming from the past for whatever reason, or are you replacing it now with an awareness that, oh, there's an old negative pattern, let me take a breath, let me get back to my process. So that's when you do use the strategy. But here's the kicker: if you and I met every day for the next month,
let's go.
Right? And for 20 minutes, I said, Ross, the only thing I want you to focus on is anytime, I mean, we could do some formal breathing and get relaxed and get quiet, but at some point after the instruction, I'm going to say, all I want you to do is, if any thought comes in your mind about any topic, positive, negative, bizarre, whatever, the only thing you do is you be neutral to the thought. Neutral meaning you don't respond, you don't fix it, you don't try to control it, you don't try to throw it away. You're just like, it's like accepting. You're like, oh, there's a thought, not right or wrong, and let me come back to my breathing. Or let me come back to, I'm just relaxed, I'm just chilling. If we did that for 20 straight minutes and you started getting acclimated and acumen at the ability, the skill to just say, wow, I'm starting to get really good at being neutral to any thoughts that go in my brain. Now, I am sitting in a chair or laying down, and There's not a lot of noise around me, and so I'm ready for it per se. And out in the world, maybe I'm not as ready for it, and so it takes practice out there in the world. But the meditation starts to give you this deep foundation with the practice, just like fly balls and ground balls and BP.
Right.
And then you start having this new skill level of going out in the world and having a base from your meditation,
Man.
where your default can start to really change. And so to me, like the meditation, what it does is it gets deep into the infrastructure. It's almost like the root. It's like you see the flower and you see the plant, but it's the roots that are really driving the growth. And meditation is really attending to the roots. And so that's why really your question is important, because on the one hand, we're making incredible gains in the mental training field, including mental practice. But, and anybody that knows me has heard this quite a bit, that until we really start figuring out that, like in spring training is one example, even though we can use this in college and high school, but I think of spring training a lot because everybody knows, for the most part, it's 30 plus days there. And I've talked to a number of people in organizations and said, even though you have mental skills people there, and they're getting much better at it, and it is happening. But if you're going to practice physically every day, every single day, there needs to be at least 10 or 15 minutes put aside for every single player to get quiet, to breathe, to learn about what it means to be neutral to their thinking. Can you imagine when they break camp, where they'd be if they had 30 days of meditation practice? And they're getting some meditation, I'm sure, with the mental skills coaches, but this is a different animal. This is a daily application for everybody. And the cool thing is, we talked about Sheets off camera earlier, but Sheets and I have gotten so close, and this is now just so part of his world. And this is something that is I don't know about every single year, every single day, but I know for sure maybe last year, every single day, and I think this year he did it too, but for sure I know the year before, it's every single day is meditate. They lay down, and it's 15, 18 minutes, whatever it is, and give or take, obviously some days might be shorter. So long story short, man, is very, very encouraged. I feel like it's light years ahead of where it was when I started in 1990. But I'd say the one area that really needs a lot more love, and it needs to be at the forefront, is actually the practicing itself.
You illustrated that perfectly, because I think you hear the word, and I want to get your take on it. You hear the phrase mental toughness. You got to be mentally tough, and I don't really know what that, like. Am I supposed to not care? Am I supposed to be? I don't know what mental toughness means. And mental practice to me is hearing that, I'm like, that it's being prepared. Mentally tough is being prepared, and you're not prepared if you don't practice. That's what it means to me. So there's a lot of well-meaning parents out there that want the best for their kids, and you always hear, life imitates baseball, and there's so many baseball players out there, and hopefully they're learning quality things to translate into the rest of their life. How important because the mental piece of understanding, and I'm using this loosely, but process over results, the being aware, the mental part of the game is almost more important than anything physically you'll ever do, because it's truly preparing you for the rest of your life. Give me some feedback on that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you could say the mental drives the physical. You could do 50 hours a week of physical preparation, if the mind is not supporting you in your physical preparation, right? So the mind is I always use the analogy, the mind is the engine of the car. You could have the prettiest, upholstery and steering wheel and tires and bumper and paint job. It could look beautiful. The engine of the car is driving the car.
Yeah.
And that's the mind, that's the brain. So it starts there. And then secondly, to your point about life, is what better reason than to work on your mental
Amen.
approach, knowing that the ultimate payoff is for life skills, life development, mental health. It's absolutely the single most important part of I think what we do in life, as far
Mm.
as at least from a mental health point of view, and I'd argue from a spiritual health point of view, because to me, the more mentally healthy you are, you could say the clearer you are, the quieter you are, the more free you are. You could argue the more spiritually in tune you are,
That's right.
whatever your faith is. But I'm just saying, they go hand in hand. When you study meditation, again, whatever walk of life that someone's belief system is about, I respect. I'm just saying, you feel closer to that faith or that spirituality because you're more in tune with like who you really are, but
Wow.
when you're quiet and clear and free and at peace. How about this? If meditation makes you much more peaceful and much more calm and much more clear, you tend to believe that you're going to be much more in tune with your instincts, your intuition, your faith, your spirituality, like
Mm.
love. Like it all goes together.
It does, and you know what? I heard my pastor. I go to Life Church, and it's Craig Rochelle. It's a massive church, but he said a couple months ago. He said, "Stay connected. Don't quit trying to get everything right. If you want things to fall into place, and I'm summing him up, but if you want it to start kind of going your way, quit focusing on the results and focus on staying connected to my faith, to my Savior." And I hear a lot of that in what you're saying. Um,
Love it.
I'm curious, talking with Allan Jaeger of Jaeger Sports on episode 65 of the Baseball Forward podcast. I got about 10 more minutes with you, Mr. Jaeger. Your eyes have seen a lot of baseball. Like, let's not kid ourselves. Your eyes have probably seen some of the best to ever do it. You've influenced a lot of guys on the baseball field. So, your assessment, if someone came to you and said, give me a quick response on what does it take to be the best based on what you've seen, what
Mm.
are the best baseball players doing?
God, that's a great question. Um, I have a lot of answers, but one of the first words that jumps out at me is discipline.
Ooh, yeah.
Um, there's a different level of discipline. With discipline, you could say comes responsibility and accountability. But there's a discipline, there's a drive and determination. Like, I mean, you've been doing this a long time. You obviously see that too. But there's something powerful about the discipline, the willingness to stay in the process and do what needs to get done regardless of what's going on around you. So that's one. Two is, I think passion's way up there. I think the players, and part of the passion is the passion to be disciplined to do
Yeah.
what you need to do. But I think, as we both know, there's a big passion aspect to it. I think, as you know, I mean, I'm going to say a lot of things as well, from doing this for a long time. There's a sense of open-mindedness, growth mindset, right? That's like a biggie. Not that you swallow everything you hear, but
Sure.
you're interested and you're open-minded. And I think those are really, the discipline to me just covers so much, because the discipline is also about, doing little things, like whether it's, getting your sleep, eating right, the reps, doing the reps, prioritizing the reps. I just think there's a different level of determination and hunger, and
Mm.
it's not phony. It's just
Wow. Yeah.
in a way, it's the process. They're driven by the process. They're driven by the process to get better, and they're driven by the process to look under any rock. They have to, and you could kind of, you said determination. You could put in resiliency. Another word that jumps out at me is adaptability, right? You have to be able to
Mm.
adapt. They
Sure.
they adapt great to situations. They don't get, like, if something negative happens, They don't get like over consumed by that. They see it as a teacher, right? That's the growth oriented mentality. They see it as a teacher. But I think those are some of I don't know why. The discipline is, well, in my first book I wrote, well, the only book I really technically have out there that I've written on mental game and life, there's 8 chapters, and one of the chapters is called discipline.
Mm. Discipline is important, I would say. You're a long way into this, and you got a long way to go. What do you, as the years go by, like, what do you wish you would have known then, like, that you know now? If you were coaching a younger version of yourself in life, just to say in baseball, because I think that's important. Not necessarily regrets, but mistakes you wish you kind of would have, you could have learned from somebody else. What do you wish you would have known then, what you know now about the game of baseball?
Oh, that's a good one. Part of my answer is going to sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. I'm already setting that message out there. Number one, fortunately, I was very disciplined for the most part, reps, hungry, determined. So in a way, whatever happened in my career, I felt like I positioned myself well. With that said, and also I got heavy into the mental game at a very young age. My career was just sort of ending when I was at Cal State Northridge. But it's what happened at Cal State Northridge that actually was the springboard to me getting so interested in the mental game. And
Wow.
I want to say getting to the mental game earlier, but I did get into it earlier. But I guess if I really could go back to your question, I would say that if I was able to really understand meditation, the process, the mental game, mental awareness, mental training, it's hard to say like how early are you ready for that? But if I was, I've met some pretty mature kids that are 10, 11, 12, but
Sure.
let's even say 13, 14. If I really could have started to understand that better, number one, it would have really helped me my junior year in college, but then I wouldn't have got on the path that I was on. So that's where I don't have any regrets.
Sure. Yeah.
But I would say, I think where your question is going, correct me if I'm wrong, is it's really all going to come back to, if any parent or any player asks me this question right now, what would I want them to do it as early as possible? It's going to always come back to awareness of meditation, breathing, presence, process, becoming a 10th degree black belt. We have no problem, for the most part, kids that are passionate about baseball. We have no problem taking 100 ground balls or 400 hacks in the cage, right? Every day. And it's great. It's fun. I love it. So we get, in a way, regardless of where level we end up at, in a way we get that black belt sort of feeling, regardless of our ability level.
Sure.
But we do the reps physically. And so my point is this, sort of back to an earlier part of the discussion, is that there's nothing else. It's sort of like the throwing long toss. There's not, to me, really a close second. Like, you want to, as early as possible, start to work on that black belt, 2nd degree black belt, 3rd degree black belt, by just understanding you used the word earlier that I love, connected. Like, what does it mean to be connected to your process, connected to your faith, connected to your breath, connected to being in the present moment? What does it mean to have a heightened awareness at an earlier age, that if you get thoughts that they're not right or wrong, I'm just going to kind of let them be. I'll be learning to be neutral to them. I learned a new tool, and I don't have to push them away or fight them. I can just sort of let them be there, and then go back to the next moment and stay focused on that. Like, that's just one tool, so to speak. So that honestly, Ross, is an easy one. Like, what would I want a parent or player to pick up as soon as possible moving forward, or sorry, in this conversation is as early as you can, as early as you think they're ready for it. And I got news for you: these kids are in this day and age. They're evolving faster and faster, and you might only be able to tell an 8-year-old what it means to just take some deep breaths and slow down. Maybe that's enough for them at 8, but
Sure.
you can start the process very young with these kids to just give them some simple, hey, this is why it's nice to do a few minutes of deep breathing, and this is what it means to kind of, if you get a bad thought or a negative thought, there's this thing called being neutral and like letting it be there,
Love
and
that.
don't have a conversation with it, don't engage it, don't identify with it, just sort of let it be there, and then come back to, back to playing with Johnny or doing your homework or whatever. And so, yeah, I'm sorry for the tangent. That's
No.
a big deal to me because this is really the future of the world. The world is like how early. I've been saying this for probably 35 years. When you go to an elementary school or even kindergarten, we have math, English, science, et cetera, and that's all really important. But the thought of not having a class every day, even if it's 15 minutes for breathing, for visualization or imagery, or what it means to just stop and be still, or look at nature and just really appreciate nature. Stop. That to me needs to start with these kids at 6 as early as possible, because they're ready to start taking in. Look, they get these other messages at such a young age. Why not feed them with these types of messages?
Amen. Amen. Like, you know what a beautiful thing is? The impact. We started with the impact you're having on the game. I asked you that question at the end, and that's the impact you've had on the game. Like the impact, what is most important to you? You are living it. And that's how you've impacted people much more with the arm conditioning, all that stuff. But the what you wish you would have known then, now you're living it, my friend. Like, what a beautiful thing to impact people with what they need. I'm gonna end on something light. So I'm imagining you right now. I'm imagining. I love the chill, thoughtful, easy going, easy come, easy go. So I'm imagining you going down the road, listening to some Grateful Dead, or let's see, maybe some Neil Young. I mean, I'm telling you who I like, but I want to know this. What kind of music do you listen to, Allan? Jaeger?
Ooh, well, what you don't know is that I once flew to Paris to see a band play. So you're asked the right guy. I'm a massive music person.
Let's go.
Massive. So we can compare some notes here.
All right.
So I grew up more in the kind of classic rock era of Zeppelin and Aerosmith and The Who and those types of bands. But in high school, what really hit me hard was new wave, which it's kind of funny because now we're getting to a point where this next generation of kids, if they hear like a Billy Idol song or something, or they or the Pretenders, they're they're probably familiar with new wave. But I grew up in the new wave era, Big Country, U2, Depeche Mode, and Echo and the Bunnymen, and so I had a new wave run. Then I'll try to do this quickly. Then really around the late 80s, 90s, I started, and the new wave, obviously new wave kind of faded out, I think around the mid to late 80s. And then I started getting into Pearl Jam and Radiohead. Radiohead was key because, well, Pearl Jam and Radiohead were key because they both did different things. Pearl Jam was key because it started getting me into alt rock.
Ooh.
And so we're covering like a lot of genres here.
Yep.
But Radiohead, so they both were actually key because Pearl Jam got me in the alt rock, but Radiohead also started me in alt rock, but into more experimental and just sort of, a little more out there. And I just fell in love with Pearl Jam and Radiohead. And so then one more really huge phase I went through. By the way, and all along the way, I've always loved new age and meditation music as well. But but then the next big phase, I'd say, was singer-songwriter. And I actually started getting more into still a little alt rock, but more folky alt rock singer songwriter like Damian Rice,
Ooh.
David Gray, and
Oh,
that
yes.
more recently Glenn Hansard from Once, um, and so and I've always been drawn to like British music, like that beauty, a lot of Scottish bands, Trash Can Sinatras, which a lot of people probably maybe before their time.
Trash Can Sinatras.
I'll send you a link of some bands.
Let's
Oasis.
go. Ooh, Oasis. Lovely.
And so yeah, so it's sort of a Brit rock, new wave, alt rock, Radiohead, which whatever genre you put them in, Pearl Jam, which we started getting more into grunge. But I think my sweet spot is still sort of singer songwriter, alt rock, singer songwriter, alt rock is probably.
David Gray, the album is it White Ladder, Babylon? Oh my gosh, I used to listen to that CD on repeat in college. Oh, like every song on there is good. Paulo Nutini, have you heard of him?
I'm writing it down.
He's an Irish dude, but that's another album. I'll send it. There's a song called New Shoes, but it's like I lived out in Hermosa Beach for a while, and I started hearing some of those guys, and I'm like, man, what music is amazing. I'd probably rather talk about music than anything else. But I think this other stuff pays some bills. So, man, what a joy. Like, seriously, Allan Jaeger, you are, I'm going to say it so the audience knows it. He's accessible. He is an expert, and you're one of the nicest, kindest guys that I've met in this business, man. And good for you, because what an impact you're making on the game in so many different facets. So I want to say, sir, thank you very much for talking with me on the Baseball Forward podcast. I'm going to give you the last words, and then we'll take it out.
Hey, well, number one, I mean this sincerely. This has been such a joy to do this with you, and I appreciate your presence. I appreciate your natural, upbeat energy. I'll give you another word I love: authenticity. You're very, very authentic, and you know your stuff. And man, the questions you asked were great. So, no, I think in closing, I would just say that back to our last topic. I just hope that anybody listening to this. By now, the mental game and mental training is mainstream, but it doesn't mean people are necessarily taking it as seriously as they could, or really delving into it as much as they could. And my advice is that to just really invest in like I love the black belt analogy. I think people roll out of bed and don't really think twice about getting a black belt in the physical preparation, because it's normalized and it's part of what we do. This maybe feels a little more outside the box to meditate every day, or go to YouTube and start watching guided meditations, or watching people talk about breathing or relaxation or imagery or visualization. But make that part of your world, deeply invest into that, because it's the engine of the car. And I feel like, to your point earlier, we're talking about life. As much as we want these players to optimize their careers on the field, of course we do, but the ultimate reward and payoff, of course, is life. And so that's where I hope this podcast directs them ultimately, is to really take a step back and really look at the big picture of life, and what's the best modalities, and what are the best things to do to optimize your child or yourselves health and mental health and well-being.
Allan Jaeger, Mr. J Band, make no mistake about it. That's massive. Allan Jaeger, Jaeger Sports, episode 65 of the Baseball Forward podcast. Thank you, Allan.
Hey, thank you for having me, buddy. Appreciate it.